today, I spill the beans. I have been interested in the idea of prepping for a really long time. I just think it's wise to not only have an emergency fund in cash, in the bank, whatever, but also an emergency supply of food. When I was living in a rental house, it had 4 bedrooms, and one of the bedrooms we used as kind of that spare bedroom you just kind of throw junk in, but we threw all of our emergency food in it. And the cool thing is we weren't really prepping. We were, but we weren't. It was prepping, but also more so of a rotating pantry. So I had, say, 4 different full-size bottles of ketchup, and every time I would take a ketchup out, we would buy another 1 or 2 to add behind that. And that's what we did with beans as well. My husband is as Mexican as they come, and he loves his beans. And I've grown to love beans as well. Beans are the ultimate source of protein, of plant protein that you can get that stores for a very, very long time. As you can see, these beans were packaged up in 2020. I have found, even in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber, beans do get very hard to cook thoroughly. They stay more gritty. They don't get very soft. You know, when you cook your beans, you want to have tender, squishable beans. Black beans in particular, I have noticed, do not cook well at all when they are over a year or 2 old, even in a Mylar bag. They say that beans will last, 25 years in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber, but they won't be great. One solution online says that you can cook your beans with baking soda. They also say to soak your beans overnight. I've soaked them. I haven't tried the baking soda, but I have soaked them overnight, and it doesn't matter. I cook them, I boil them for hours and hours and hours and hours. Trust me, I know how to make beans. I know how to make tender beans. And even I, married to a Mexican who loves beans, cannot get these beans to be tender. So say that you have already prepped a bunch of beans, or that you want to prep a bunch of beans because they are great to store for long periods of time. What do? I have a solution for you. I'm not going to come and bring you a complaint without bringing you a solution too. It's all about what you're going to use the beans for. One thing I do want to mention really fast is that you could cook up your beans and serve them to your chickens. But let's say that you have a bunch of beans like we do and you do not want them to go to waste. Like I said, it's all about how you prepare them. You take your beans, you rinse them off. Soaking is not necessary unless you want to cut down on cook time. Add them to a pot, add water, probably water to maybe your knuckle above, so what is that, like 1.5 inches above the beans. You throw in maybe half a tablespoon of salt. I just measure with my heart. And I didn't tell you how many beans to do. That's because I measure with my heart. I just kind of eyeball it. But whatever amount you do, just make sure you constantly are adding in more water as it boils out, because the last thing you want is the flavor of burnt beans. You get that burn on the bottom and it transfers that flavor throughout the entire pot. Not good. Then add in a half of an onion, add in about 4 garlic cloves, and let it boil, stirring occasionally so that it doesn't stick to the bottom, doesn't burn, adding in water as necessary. And you could either let it boil with the lid partially off, or if it's a Dutch oven, I like to just leave the lid on completely. If you soaked them overnight, I don't know, it might be ready in about an hour, hour and a half, maybe a little bit less. If you haven't soaked them, I end up even going to an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. Now at this point, you're going to try the beans, and because they're old beans, they're probably going to be less tender than you would like. But you get to that point of cooking where you're starting to think they should be done, really. And this is the part where how you prepare the final dish makes a difference. you are going to take the beans and blend them up with some of that water in the beans and turn them into a refried bean consistency. You don't actually have to refry the beans. When we have refried beans in our house, it's basically just blended up cooked beans. I don't actually throw oil in the pot and refry them, but that's what we do, and it's easy and it's not as much of a mess or fuss. Blend those beans up until you get a good thick consistency, not too thick. You still want it to be able to pour out of your blender, or what you could even do is just mash them up. If you don't have any electricity, mash until you have taken out all of the frustration of the fact that your beans that you have saved and invested so much money in are now kind of hard. And now we're going to make a dish called Enfrijoladas. Enfrijoladas es una comida muy rica, tan rica que vas a gustar. That sounded impressive, didn't it? I don't actually speak Spanish, I fake Spanish. Anyway, enfrijoladas is a delicious, really easy dish common to certain parts of the Mexican culture, and it is basically a poor people's food, but it's delicious. You basically take a tortilla, you dredge it in hot oil until the tortilla is soft, and then you dredge it in your bean paste liquid, and you roll it up on a plate, or you can just fold it over. You sprinkle cheese on it, you put some diced up onion, you put some cilantro, add some salsa, some avocado, and you have an amazing, flavorful dish with the beans that would otherwise have been too hard if you had left them whole. You could serve Mexican rice on the side. You could serve just plain white rice on the side. You can do one of those little Mexican salads where it's like chopped up lettuce, diced up tomato, a little bit of avocado. And frijoladas is one of those dishes that if I don't know what else to make and I have beans in my fridge, I'm blending those up and I am going to serve them to everybody and they love it. Let's talk about the cheese that you sprinkle on top. You can do a shredded Mexican cheese. You could do even a shredded mozzarella. But the number one, número uno, queso que quieres comer con enfrijoladas is queso fresco, specifically the Cacique brand. It is so good. It is salty, it is crumbly, it is phenomenal. Okay, it's so good, so good. The other cheese that you could sprinkle on top is cotija cheese. Cotija cheese is very salty, very crumbly, very fine, almost like a Parmesan. It's like they've never seen me before. And they're like, who are you? Who are you? Intruder. I like guinea fowl, but I wish they were a little more discerning about what they're going to scream at. I mean, I guess if you don't mind, I don't mind. I'll just continue. I believe I was talking before I was rudely interrupted about cotija cheese. It is crumbly. It is akin to Parmesan. It is delicious, and it stores well in the freezer. If you need to, say you don't eat a lot of cotija cheese, you don't know if you're gonna even really like it, you try it. If you can't find queso fresco, try queso fresco first. If you cannot find it, get cotija, and then stick it in your freezer when you're done with it. And if you didn't like it, maybe you can hold on to it until maybe somebody that you know would like to try it. What's great about this dish is that if you have a dairy allergy and don't want to do cheese, maybe you're plant-based or vegan and you just don't eat cheese, then you don't have to add it in, but it does make a big difference in the overall flavor. The reason also why enfrijoladas is so good is because you've taken an incredibly cheap ingredient and you've really enhanced the overall flavor profile of the dish by cooking the beans with garlic and onion and then blending it all up together. Then you add in whatever you want on top. If you don't like cilantro, I know not a lot of people love cilantro. Not a lot of people love cilantro. So you can even take up lettuce, dice it up really well, sprinkle on top, or I like taking spinach because it's just a little bit more nutrient dense, and you can chop that up and put it on top just for like a nice little garnish of green. And then of course, the salsa of your preference, diced onions, but if you wanted to, you could also grill up some onions in some oil And if you truly wanted to, you take a pepper of really whatever variety you want, but call it a jalapeno. Take a jalapeno, fry it up all around in some oil until the outside skin is nice and browned and bubbly. Take it off the heat, sprinkle salt all around it, and take bites of that as you eat your enfrijoladas. It is an amazing dish. This is probably the highest recommendation of a cost-effective and delicious, nutritious dish that I could give to you. So here, enfrijoladas, here. Well, the guineas are telling me it's time to go, so make this dish. I hope you love it, and if you try it, please do come back and let me know in the comments below what you think of it.